and then programmed specifically to send a particular kind of style of Reiki. So the cards can actually send you Reiki. And so when I do the healing later in the podcast, it's not going to be me. It's going to be coming from the cards. And I'll just ask them to send, to the audience in the method that they work. And so one could use the cards, I guess, to kind of see what's coming up the road, the way one would tarot, but it really is more of a healing deck than like a divination deck.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
We went ahead and started the recording because you were going. It was like, oh, we want to capture this. So
Well, so I think we'll just go ahead and get started because
Okay.
did you keep the recording going? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I love that. So we went ahead, as Colleen said, and just pushed the recording button because we started getting going with Brett, who we're here today with, Brett Bevell. I'm here, of course, with Colleen. And we've
Hello.
had Brett on before. Brett, have you been on here once or twice?
I know at least once. It might have been twice.
I know, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, Colleen met Brett through the Omega Institute, and since then we've gotten to have some lovely conversations. So welcome back today, Brett. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And what Brett was talking about, we're going to get into this, but what Brett was talking about is that he actually has a new card deck out that he created. Brett, do you want to just say the name of your card deck and that kind of thing real quick?
Sure. Yeah, it's called the Reiki Divine Healing Card Deck, and it's got 44 cards in it. The concept for the deck was mine, and the energetic piece of the deck is mine. Though the artwork was not created by me, it was created by an amazing artist named Ben Scheikowitz, who used to work with me at Omega Institute.
Awesome. And where can people get that real quick? Again, we're going to have this all in the description, of course, but
Yeah, they can get it pretty much at any bookstore. If they don't have it in-house, they can certainly order it. Also, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or if you wanted to go direct to the publisher, US Games, which is the publisher of like most of the tarot decks in the world, they also sell it directly as well.
okay. Awesome. Well, where did the idea come from? We'll just start there with the deck because we're in this now. And Colleen and I know with Colleen and I were like, wait, we're going to do a little bit of a healing and all of that. So we'll just go into it.
Okay. I mean, it was interesting the way this all occurred. It felt very divinely planned because what happened was I was simply, doing a healing at a small healing center in Mount Kisco, New York. And it was a group healing where people come in, they lie down, I send energy to everyone in the room for about an hour, and then we end. And when it ended that day, this woman who I'd never met before comes up, walks up to me, and she goes, "My name's Allison DiNicola, and I work at US Games, and we would love you to do a Reiki deck." And so really it was like it came to me. Now I did have a deck that was already created, but it wasn't Reiki. It was a deck based on my other form of energy healing that I call Magical Awakening. And so I tried to see, oh, would they maybe be open to doing that since it's already created? And they were like, no, we want a Reiki deck. I'm like, okay, that works. I love Reiki. Let's make a Reiki deck. And so they then presented me with the option of uh, some people that they had worked with in terms of the artwork who've helped with other decks. But they were also like, you could use some of these artists who we'd recommend, or you could use, if there's any artists or if you want to do your research, whatever works. And so I did like some of the artwork that they had shown me, but I also, through my work at Omega Institute, have been exposed to a number of amazing artists. And as I was doing my research, I just started to think about this fellow named Ben Scheikowitz, who actually used to be my assistant at Omega. And his job at Omega was running art classes for the staff at the time. And so I was looking at some of his artwork online. And as I was looking at some of his artwork online, I realized he had already created images that would be perfect matches for at least about 5 or 6 of the cards that I have in my mind. I'm like, let's go with him. I know him. We work well together, and some of the cards are already created. Actually, this card, I'm going to hold this one up. This one that is the image of the front part of the deck, the kind of the deck box. This card he had already created. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's a perfect card to use for this dream healing that I'll talk about later. But So again, some of the artwork was already created, and I was like, wow, he's the guy. So then we started from there. This was back in 2017, though, because think of it, 44 images, that's a lot of paintings to create, and it takes some time. So again, he was a lovely partner to work with on this project, and I deeply appreciate all that he brought to it as well.
Wow, just sounds super divinely ordered is a good way to say that.
Yeah, it does. And there's one other thing that I'll just throw in there again on this story of the creation of the deck. So after Ben and I signed the contract, and again, this was back in 2017, there was a woman who had worked at Omega for pretty much since its inception. Her name was Amina Eagle. She was in either her late 80s or early 90s at the time. I don't remember. But one of the images and I'll see if I can find it. I might have to scroll through my cards. One of the images in the deck is a painting that Ben had done of her. And again, that was one of those paintings that was already created. And she was always known at Omega for being just so gracious and kind. And when I looked at that painting, that image of the painting, I'm like, that to me, that's a card that embodies the precept of kindness. And so again, that was one. I'm trying to pull through all my cards here and see if I can find. Here it is. So this card was also already created, and it's of Amina Eagle. And the interesting thing is, I didn't want to use an image of her, even though the image was already created. I didn't want to use an image of her without her consent. So I emailed her, actually not emailed, I Facebook messaged her. I think I think this was in April of 2017 and said, would you be okay if we use this image from this painting that Ben already created as part of our deck? And she wrote back, I would be honored. And then 2 days later, she passed on to the next realm. And so again, everything felt like it was just kind of staged in terms of timing and in this kind of divine order. So again, I've just felt very blessed on the whole journey with this deck.
Well, it almost has the feeling that the deck already existed and found you to
Yeah.
manifest it.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that's totally true. That's totally true. And again, I know, neither of you knew Amina, but she just so perfectly embodied that sense of kindness, and she was so beloved by the staff at Omega. So uh, I'm happy that she and her image and her energy are part of this deck.
Well, two things. The first card you held up, the dream healing, Reiki dream healing. And when you hold them up, be sure you tell us what they say because a lot of people are only listening.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
But it was fascinating that that was the first card you wanted to show us because as I was telling you before we started, we have literally spent the last 6 weeks in our distance Reiki share talking about how to use Reiki to manifest your dreams
Oh, wow.
and all
Wow.
the healing around it that's needed and the empowerment that's needed. And so I love that you held that card up first. It's been
Yeah,
a whole topic, like literally we've been enmeshed in that topic.
it is definitely one of my favorite cards in the deck. And when we do the healing, I'm going to save that one for the end because there's a little twist to it that's different than with the other cards. And I don't want to spoil the fun, so I'm not going to give it away yet. But
Ooh,
it's a
teaser.
really wonderful card. Yeah.
And then what does the card say that, and I'm sorry, is her name Amina?
Amina. Yeah. Amina
Amina.
Eagle. It basically just has the precept
What does it
from a
say?
Asui. It says, just for today, I will be kind to every living thing.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, she was a beautiful soul. Is a beautiful soul, just on a different plane now.
So then how do the cards work, Brett? You were talking about how they work with the crystal and the Reiki and the healing and, if you're a user of them, how do they work?
Yeah, so I'll give you an overview of how the deck is structured and then ways that one can work with them. So there are 44 cards total, and there are 4 different suits. So there's a suit of what I call Reiki's Foundation, which has a sui. It also has some of the concepts from some of my books. It has some cards that are related to some of the specific symbols in the tradition. So that I call the suit of Reiki's Foundation. There's also a suit of Reiki meditations, where the cards are meant to bring you into particular meditative states. That includes the different cards that are for the precepts, but there's also other Reiki meditations, such as a Reiki meditation for self-love, Reiki meditation for strength, and so on. So again, there's 11 cards of that. There are also 11 cards of specific treatments, like treatment focused on the chakras, a treatment focused on the etheric body, mental emotional healing, and so on. 11 cards for that. And then there's also another set that I call the suit of saints, angels, and divine avatars. And so in that suit, there are archangels such as Archangel Michael, Raphael, Metatron, Gabriel. There's also Saint Germain, there's Jesus, there's Amma, there's Buddha. And in those cards, each of those cards again has their own Reiki crystal in them, but they also, in those specific cards, they have what I call a Reiki portal, which is connected to that particular angel or avatar or saint, right? So what that card does, it's not that it's sending additional Reiki, it's just bringing in the energy of that particular being into the healing. And again, we'll play with some of that when we get to doing the healing portion uh, the using the deck on the podcast today.
And can you refresh us on how the Reiki crystal works? Because I know not everybody who will listen to this will have heard
Sure. Yeah. So the Reiki crystal, that's something that came to me during the winter of 2007. It was through a mystical experience I had, a visitation from Mikao Sui. And the Reiki crystal is, the best way I can describe it is if you can think of an energetic crystal, not a physical crystal, but an energetic crystal made out of the light of Reiki that then sits just in front of the practitioner's heart chakra. And the beautiful thing about the Reiki crystal is that it can be programmed in certain ways, and it can also do a few things that are a little bit outside the box of traditional Reiki, I have found, such as creating certain energetic structures and, as I mentioned, energetic portals and things like that. And so that's why it just feels really in alignment with this idea of a deck where the cards could actually be empowered, the crystal could be programmed so that the cards themselves are then sending the healing. And that's what I really love about this deck is it's like having 44 Reiki healers with you, and then you just choose what combination you want. Um, the deck does also come with a book, and the book gives brief descriptions of each card in terms of their intent, how you could use them. It also has a few spreads that one could investigate. Like there's a spread in there that I'd really like to use that is for healing ancestral trauma, where there's a card that represents you, one for your mother, one for your father, and then going back a few generations. And then it works to bring healing to those ancestral lines. There are also invitations in the book for people to design their own spreads based on their own needs and how they could do that. So I really love working with the spreads, but I have to be totally honest. My favorite way of working with these cards is to simply pick three. Sometimes it's three cards that I intentionally pick, like, oh, I want this one and this one and this one. Or sometimes it might be me just shuffling the deck and letting spirit pick what those three cards are. And then I will intentionally ask those cards to activate and synchronize their energy and then send towards myself or whatever it is that I'm bringing the healing towards. And the reason I say that activate and synchronize their energy is because, if you've ever been, and I know both of you have, but I'm not sure if everyone who's listening has, if you've ever been in a situation where there's more than one person working on you with Reiki, how that the energy really gets amplified. That's the same true with these cards. So when I'm asking them to activate and synchronize, that's that sense of they're really working together on you. And it does really seem to take the healing to a much deeper place. So again, we'll have a chance to experience that directly when we do the healing with the card deck.
I also, real quick, Colleen, I see you 1 second. I just wanted to say too, in that previous episode, we definitely did a Reiki crystal experience. Did we do an attunement in that one as well, or was it just the experience?
I may have done the attunement. I
think you
don't
did the
remember.
attunement.
Sometimes I do, and
Yeah.
sometimes I don't when I'm on podcasts. So it's very likely I did. I just don't
Yeah.
remember
Okay.
specifically.
I think we did then. I was just making sure.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that on something? Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think we did. So people can also go back to that and receive the attunement to the Reiki crystal. So sorry, Colleen.
Yeah.
I know I saw you.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just going to say, I feel like I can already feel the energy of them. And for those listening, this is our first introduction. I mean, we've talked to Brett and we know Brett, so we know that he's going to have something that is a really beautiful energy, but I actually can feel it just by talking about it already. Yeah.
I'm wondering, would this be jumping ahead? Should I do a healing now or should we wait for
I
later?
really want you to.
Let's do it. I know both of us are like,
Okay.
we have
So
to wait. Let's do it now.
well, let's do a healing and then we can just
Yeah.
from there and see where things want to go. So again, just planning for today's podcast, I put some cards into groups of three because again, that's often how I like to do them. And I'll hold them up. I'll tell you what cards they are, and then I'll do the invocation so that they then begin to send to you. So the first three cards that I picked today, one is that I call Reiki lasers, which is a concept from my book Psychic Reiki, of kind of these intense beams of Reiki light that the Reiki crystal can put between any 2 points in time and space. The other one is a treatment called Reiki organs and organ systems healings, where the card sending directly to all the various organs and organ systems. And the third card is a Reiki meditation card, where it's bringing the consciousness of each cell in your body into a Reiki meditation for healing and perfect health. And so I'm gonna, before I do the invocation on these cards, I'm specifically gonna ask the card that represents Reiki lasers. I'm gonna ask that card to manifest Reiki lasers connecting between each and every bone in your body to each and every other bone in your body. And now I'm gonna ask these three cards to activate and synchronize and send their healing light out now to everybody who is watching or listening to this podcast, including both you, Colleen, and Robin, here in present time. And so we're just going to let that energy move out, and then we're going to add to it just different waves of healing light. The next three cards that I have here, one is called Chakra Reiki, the other one is called Etheric Body Reiki, and the other one is called Karmic Body Reiki. And I'm asking these cards to activate and synchronize their energy and send a wave of healing to everyone who is part of this podcast, including anybody in the future watching it or listening to it. And the next three cards I have the one again with Amina Eagle, which is just for today, I will be kind to every living thing. I have one of the Neem Karoli Baba, who was the guru for Ram Dass, for those of you who are familiar with his spiritual teachings. And I also have a Reiki card on the meditation for strength. And so asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send their healing light out to you now. And again, that's including everybody who's watching this or listening to this in the future. And the next three cards, I have Saint Germain. I have the Reiki crystal card, which it's kind of, I almost think of it like the Joker card, like it can be anything I want it to be. And I have Reiki for clearing cords between people. So Saint Germain, Awful's Keeper of the Violet Flame, is also good for clearing cords. So I'm also going to ask that the Reiki crystal card in here also just work towards clearing any cords. So asking these cards to activate and synchronize and help clear any unwanted cords from the energy field of anybody who's watching or listening to this now or in the future. And the next three cards, I have the card for Jesus Christ. Again, that's a Reiki portal to Christ and his energy. There's a Reiki meditation for forgiveness. And then there's a card for Reiki for spiritual heart opening. And I'm asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send their healing light out to you now. And the next three cards, I have one of the Hugging Saint Amma. I have one called Reiki for Inner Peace, which is a meditation card. And then I have an energetic structure called the Reiki Sphere of Divine Grace, which is specific to the Reiki crystal, where it creates this huge bubble of Reiki light around you. So asking these cards to now activate and synchronize and send their healing light out to you now. And so these are the ones that I pre-picked and I wouldn't finish. So the next ones are going to be just like random draws. Let's see what Spirit has for us. We have Mikawa Sui. We have the Universal Reiki Healing Grid, which again is a concept from one of my books. And we have Reiki for Cosmic Awakening. asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send their healing light out to you now. Oh, the next three are all Reiki meditation cards. I love it. Two of them are precepts. Just for today, I will make my living honestly. Just for today, do not worry. And also a Reiki meditation for self-love. So we're going to ask these cards to activate and synchronize and kind of bring you into a combined Reiki meditation on these three. So asking that to happen now. Let's see what are the cards that want to come through next. Well, we've got a couple angels here. We have Archangel Metatron, which again, this is one of the other paintings that already existed before Ben and I had even come to agreement about doing the deck. We have the Archangel Raphael, and we also have a Reiki meditation on joy. So asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send their healing light out to you now. In the next three cards, I have Just for Today, Do Not Anger. I have the Archangel Michael. And we have Kuan Yin, the goddess Kuan Yin. Asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send their healing light out to you now. And then the next three cards, we have Buddha, we have Archangel Gabriel, and we have Mother Mary. And I'm asking these three cards to activate and synchronize and send their healing light out to you now. And then I've just got, there's some other cards in the deck, but I'm just going to do two more. And this one I'm just going to do on its own, which is the precept Just for Today, Be Grateful. I'm going to asking this card again to bring everyone into a Reiki meditation on that precept. Just for today, I will be grateful. And while it's doing that, just allow that sense of gratitude to really emerge and unfold for you. Again, there's a few cards I didn't get into, but I want to go ahead and now come to this one. So this one has a very unique process with it. It's Reiki Dream Healing. And again, these cards have their own Reiki crystal in it. Reiki crystal has divine wisdom in it, right? Reiki has divine wisdom in it. So the invitation here is for you, as you're looking at the card, to think of either a dream or even a segment of a dream, and just simply in your mind tell that to the card. And as you do so, it will send you some healing light based on that dream. And then I'll give you a little explanation afterwards of where this particular technique came from. And for those of you who might be listening to this simply as an audio in the future, you can just hold that intention. You don't have to see the card. You can just hold that intention that you're telling this card a piece of a dream or all of a dream, and it will then send some healing to you. I'm going to go ahead and just bring that card down now and just allow a little space for the healing to bring itself to a close. And while that's occurring, I will talk now just a little bit more about that last card and where that piece of healing came from. So many years ago, there was an amazing shaman at Omega Institute, a woman named Caroline. She was somebody who I really considered to be my mentor. She's no longer on this plane of reality, but she used to teach these really amazing dream classes, and she just taught them for the staff. She was never in the catalog, but these dream classes were some of the most amazing spiritual events that I have ever been to. And the best way I can describe it is if you've ever done dream work where you're playing out part of the dream the way you might in say like Gestalt dream work or something like that, if you could imagine that, but also almost like family constellation work where you're suddenly just knowing and feeling stuff, but then add on to that where it's not, in family constellation work, you might suddenly feel the presence of an ancestor or a family member. With her dream work, you would feel the presence of angels and divine beings and a family member and your pet and a tree and all this amazing energy just come into the space at once. And so when I was asking the cards, I was like, and not asking the cards, but asking the Reiki crystal, I said, is there any way to even come close to replicating that? And even though that card is not the same as Caroline's class, it's kind of based on that concept. And so when I've done it myself, I will often feel energy come through that then maybe brings me to an insight about the dream, some awareness about the dream that then is important to me. Or it also might even just be a physical healing that I need. So I just wanted to give some insight about what is that dream healing card about, because it is a little bit more mysterious than some of the others.
Well, and dream, to me, the dreaming is also like showing up not only in my sleeping dream, but in my awake dreaming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I found that interesting too. I was like, wait, which kind of dream? So I did
Yeah.
send a dream that I have a memory of, an actual, sleep dream, and then also a dream as far as like a life dream.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if it has to have a parameter around it, Brett. Did you have an idea of which one it kind of means, or can it be all of it?
I
All of
mean, I think it could really be all of that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? A dream, I think there's reasons that we use one word for all of that, right? So yeah.
that's true.
Uh,
Well, and I would imagine you'll learn more about them as people share their experience with them.
yes. Yeah. I think that's certainly the case for sure.
So how long have the cards been out now, Brett?
They were released in s- s- technically they were released in August of last year, though we did do a little bit of a pre-release last year at the Reiki conference at Omega. So when I originally learned of what I thought was the release date. It was supposed to be in the spring of last year, but then there were some delays that happened. But they were able to get some cards to Omega for the Reiki conference we had there last year. But then the official release date for bookstores and Amazon and Barnes and Noble, et cetera, was in August of last year.
Mhm.
So have you heard of any neat stories from people that with the cards?
I actually have. I would say to me, well, there's two that come to mind. One is my own personal one, which I'll share later, but another one has been a couple times with veterans groups, and
Oh,
one of which was at Omega Institute. It was in September, where Ben Scheikowitz, who was the artist for this, he now lives in North Carolina, but we were able to arrange for he and his family to come up and stay at Omega, and we did an evening event for anybody who was at Omega that particular night about the deck, where he and I talked about the cards and talked about how they were created. And then we also did a healing on the audience, and it was held in the Ram Dass Library, the second floor of that library, and it was a pretty packed house. I don't know exact number, but I'm guessing maybe about 90 people or so were there. And so I did a healing on the audience just using the deck. I wasn't sending anything myself. I was just doing the deck similar to what I did just now. And then afterwards, we went to the cafe to celebrate because Ben and I were like, this was our first time together, kind of celebrating the release of the deck. And we actually had a cake that had been uh, had like color printed the image of the deck on top of it.
mm,
So it looked like we were eating the deck later in the cafe.
to eat the
So we're
deck.
sitting out, just hanging out with, him. He's got some beautiful kids, and I have a 9-year-old son, and his kids are the same age. And so they're all playing in the cafe, and we're hanging out with, and we're just kind of enjoying this celebration of the deck. And I noticed there's a table of these men that are in another part of the cafe, and we had some extra cake, and I walked over there, and they're like, we were at your healing tonight. That was really amazing. That was really great. And I thought, well, I'm glad they were at the healing, and they started talking about being veterans. And I said, well, I'm really, first I want to thank you for your service, and also glad that you were here tonight. And I hope that the healing was helpful. And then they didn't say that much more to me that night. So I didn't, it didn't really resonate in a deep way. But about a week later, while I was in the dining hall at Omega, the CEO of Omega came up to me and she goes, we got word from that group of veterans that were on campus that of all the things that they did at Omega during their time that they were here, that they were just totally blown away by the healing that they received from from you and that deck. And so that really resonated for me and was very meaningful for me. And then a few weeks ago, a woman reached out to me who was not part of that group, but a woman who does work with the Veterans Administration. Reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have this group. I've been using your deck. They would really love to meet you online. Would you be willing to show up and talk about the deck and do a healing?" And so this group had already been doing work with the deck online. And again, so it was similar where I just showed up. I did a Zoom healing for them, for the group, and just answered questions that they had about the cards. And so that's just something that has really touched me a lot. The fact that veterans who have often been, through some pretty gnarly circumstances, find that this deck is helpful for them. And the beautiful thing about the deck is once you have it, you can always be asking it for healing and to bring healing into your life. One other piece I wanted to share about that, because I did say I wanted to share one of my own personal stories. Uh, Around the same time that the deck was released, I got into a car accident. And it wasn't horrible in the sense that, I didn't receive any major injuries, but I was definitely rattled. Um, I was probably most rattled and also somewhat embarrassed because the accident was actually my fault. It was my driving error that caused this accident. And again, there was no major physical injuries, though my car was technically totaled, not because the damage was horrible, but because it was an old car and the repairs exceeded the value of the car. But it was one of those things where I was just like shook up and rattled and feeling shame and just wanting to clear and release that situation. Also, I mean, the police were there. It was my fault. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? Am I going to get points on my license? Am I going to get a big fine? Like I was just in this weird place. And so I remember putting on my altar a set of 3 cards. I put the Jesus card, and I put the forgiveness card, and then there was a third card. I don't remember which card it was, but I just simply put those cards on my altar. And for every day, as I got up for about a week, I would just go to my altar. I'd ask these cards. I said, please activate and synchronize and send forgiveness to everything about that situation. To forgive me, to forgive anybody who may have been part of that entangled energy, to forgive all of it, right? And as I was doing that, I would just feel that sense of that entangled angst just melt away, totally melt away. Uh, and for me, like the real kind of like sign from the universe that this really ended up in forgiveness was that when I did go through the legal process, like I didn't get any points, like nothing really happened. I mean, yes, it was my fault, but I just basically got like a $25 fine. And I kept thinking like, I had this like nightmare story that I created in my mind, and yet through these cards and being able to move through that and release that, it became this situation where that sense of grace and forgiveness really ended up kind of ruling the day, so to speak. So, and again, that was me just doing a short invocation each morning for every day for about a week.
It's so powerful to even realize that part of the emotions that you were experiencing, and then to have a tool that's immediately available, like the card, that you could go back and remind yourself each day
Mm-hmm.
to engage with it, and then, like you say, receive that grace and allow that to be done for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to elaborate on that too, if you don't mind, just because,
Yeah.
we are in a very let's say polarizing time
Mm.
here in our country. And so what I've been doing lately is just putting the cards of the Amina Eagle image that I showed you earlier of just for today, I will be kind to every living thing. Also the card that is for meditation on strength, and also the card for Neem Karoli Baba, and his message was more about spiritual service. And so just putting them on my altar every day and every morning, I just say, please activate and synchronize and send healing light out to my day. And I've been doing that now for about a week. And I have to say, for me as a healer, as a practitioner, just as a citizen, it has totally changed my attitude to where I just feel in this place of it, what I guess we refer to as empowered grace, this sense of knowing that there's my part to bring more light into the world, in whatever ways I can. And there's also things that I can let go of in terms of not having to feel like I'm controlling the world or the bigger picture. And so that sense of kindness and strength and trust in the divine has been really helpful for me. So I just wanted to share that as well.
I
Thank
think
you.
too, it's sometimes what's nice about a deck, I know for me, for an oracle deck, is that sometimes we don't even know what we need.
Hmm.
I was wondering when you said the third card on your altar, I was like, I wonder if it was self-love. I don't know if it was.
I had the same thought.
It may have been. I
You
just
felt
don't remember what it was, but it may have been. It's very
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. But that sometimes we don't know what we need. And that is one of the things that I like about having cards, is that other times we do, and we don't know why, or maybe like you said, you just want to put intention behind certain energies, like you just described about kindness um and strength. And then other times when, like, I've got all of this happening, or I'm going through something, or maybe even things are good and peaceful, I don't know what I need. And so you can just pull them, and it helps speak to you. And I like in this because a lot of my oracle decks don't necessarily have an action behind them, which is
Hmm.
fine. Like, I love my decks. I have a relationship, as so many of us do. I have a relationship with them, but I do like also that there is a little bit of that meditation, that action behind some of these cards that can be a helpful part of that process.
Yeah, I mean, I've had, it's interesting because I use them primarily, like I said, as a deck for healing, but I have had some people say that they use them really as that, they'll shuffle them and it tells them something that really like illuminates for them what's happening that day. And so
Yeah.
even though I didn't create them with that purpose, they can serve that purpose. And so it's really beautiful to hear people's feedback that some people are using them in that way.
Yeah, I can imagine that, because the healing comes through them. If you're struggling, let's say you're going through a hard cycle, how do I heal this? How do I move through this? And, so we ask Reiki for those things to come through. And because these are so Reiki activated, infused, and healing, like, we may not know what that is, but if you pull, like, let's even say, just for today, I need to have gratitude. Like, that is such a helpful thing to be able to look to in hard cycles, that it can help us kind of maybe even put one foot in front of the other, and whatever healing comes from that activation of that card as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that one because just before, just before we came on this morning, I was making a little video on that particular card. So,
Oh,
Yeah, the strength
it's
card
funny or
really.
not. Sorry,
Yeah.
Colleen.
No, go ahead.
I just said it's funny or not. You know what I mean? Like, that divinely ordered aspect.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the more we talk about it, the more I can feel that idea of, when you were sharing that it took 8 years, 7 years to really complete from the beginning to the completion. And I can feel that idea of the deck being already existing and very clearly guiding you as to what it would be, and imbuing, because I can literally feel the energy of the cards that you held up and sent. And so, how the energy of Reiki must have, just intended to imbue those cards for this purpose
Yeah.
and guide you to the manifestation of them.
Yeah, again, everything has felt just totally divinely ordered, and there hasn't been much uh, struggle or effort involved. It's really just kind of allowing each step to just present itself, and then just keep moving forward. But yeah, yeah.
Colleen said in the beginning that one of the things that, or maybe she said it before the recording, one of the things that we are talking about as an overall subject this month is spiritual Reiki, how it helps us with our spiritual awakening, or, you know, um, so one of the things that I find, whether we're from the very beginning or later on in our process with this path, is that, um, all of our kind of intuitive process comes to us in a different way.
Hmm.
And so I'm just curious, Brett, when you said like it just kept unfolding, but you've written a lot of books, you've made these cards. Do you have any sort of way that this channeled energy presents itself to you to then kind of be able to put down onto a paper? Is there any process that you have? Or I know after a certain point, it just is and it flows. And, we sit down. You're also a poet too, right? So
Yeah.
it just is and we sit down. But I know when we're kind of first starting in this process of our spiritual path, that some of those things can feel a little like, wait, what? How does that work for each person? Because it's so different. And so I'm just wondering if you have any insight into that or any way that you think about it.
Yeah. So for me, I think, well, I'll answer it in a couple segments or parts. So in terms of just my own process with regards to spirituality and Reiki and just energy healing in general, is like really for me it has been that place of allowing that kind of divine child in me to emerge that is open to the infinite possibilities of divine imagination. And sometimes in some of my trainings, I talk about this idea of divine imagination that sometimes I think, we think something and we think that we thought it just because it just popped in our head, but like, no, did it really just pop in our head? Or is it something that's connected to this greater imagination of the divine? And maybe that thought popped in your head because you're supposed to really run with it and see where it takes you. And so sometimes with my own, you know, energy work, that sense of being like this child that is just playing with the divine. Like I'm being gifted with the divine light of Reiki or even other modalities as well. And so how can I just play with the divine? We're just gonna have fun. And so sometimes I even approach a healing from that point of view of like, okay, it's time to play with the divine. And I know that in the process of playing with the divine, healing will happen, but I'm not focused on trying to fix anybody or trying to, you know, heal somebody. I'm just playing with the divine. I'm just having fun. And the side product is all these kind of amazing things happen. So that in terms of my experience with energy healing, if you wanted to say what is my research process, that is my research process of like something pops in my head and like, okay, well the divine must have just popped that in my head for a reason. Let me play with it and just see what happens. So in terms of different possibilities, different techniques, even empowering inanimate things such as like a card deck, like that is where that comes from. And in terms of my actual writing process, when I'm writing, I usually try to be, whether it's, a book on energy healing or a more creative piece, um, I usually just try to envision a very specific person in my life and, imagine that I'm telling that person about this process, right? And keeping in mind too, just from the publishing world, that usually, the kinds of books that I write, publishers are usually going to be looking for something that's around 40,000 words, give or take. And so in my mind, I'll go into, okay, I have 40,000 words to tell this person who I know. And usually, depending on the book, I'm thinking of a very specific person. But I have 40,000 words to tell them about this thing that I know. And how can I convey that in a way so that they could then use it in their own lives?
I'm like, well, I wish I knew that years ago when I first started writing. That would be a really helpful piece to, and it's so funny because we do that with like our website. Who are we speaking to? I always talk about that. Like
Yeah.
when you are doing your social media or you're doing anything, who are you actually speaking to? Like
Hmm.
create that image in your mind. And I guess I have done it in all my articles and writing, but to think in terms of that tangible. But I also love the playing with the divine. And I guess the question would be for a lot of people when they're struggling, or not just struggling, when they're creating, how to get to that childlike wonder. Is that just a natural part of your personality, or do you use Reiki to get there, or your cards to get there?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think it feels like it's a natural part of my personality now. I don't know that it has always been, or maybe it has always been, but for a long time it was buried,
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go deep into my own history, but I came from a very traumatic childhood and really I think was probably into my even past or just post college years where I was, pretty much like a just really very depressed, isolated soul for the most part until I started to work on myself first through, traditional therapy and then 12-step groups and then starting to branch off into more like, shamanic work and energy healing. And it was really not to discount the more traditional therapeutic things that I did because I think they were helpful, but it was really when I got into energy healing that my acceleration truly began in terms of healing from my childhood wounds. And so I really think a lot of my, if you want to say creativity or playfulness, came out of this sense of like, okay, I've got these really deep, deep, dark wounds. And yes, I can, use the mental emotional healing symbol to move past that. But given the amount of baggage that I have there, that's going to take a really long time. How can I move through this faster? And so I just tried to think of like, what else can I do to change the equation of what else, how can I bring more energy into this? How can I even that concept of the Reiki lasers, it was really kind of born from this idea of like, how can I then run energy like literally through like all of my lifetimes or all of my lifetimes with a specific soul or individual who maybe there was some negative karma with. And so I'd be doing these techniques really as my way of like, hey, I know I only have a certain amount of time on this planet in this life, and I don't really want to be carrying this huge rock of stuff for the next 10 or 15 years. I want to get done with it so I can just enjoy enjoy life. So I think a lot of it was just almost like out of necessity in my own healing process of like, hey, I want to just release as much as I can, as fast as I can. Please, divine, show me some creative ways to kind of accelerate that process. So
And I like the term you use, divine imagination, because I do think it's at the core of everything.
yeah.
And receiving that divine imagination, and I would also say, as a practitioner, it is probably one of the most wounded areas in people,
Mm-hmm.
either through, like you say, trauma or just culture,
Mm-hmm.
all of the above. It could be from anything.
Yeah.
But it is commonly one of the things that I find for people. It's really trying to reveal within each person
Mm-hmm.
their authentic imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to start adding the word divine imagination to it too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's really the other one that you had. There's so many of those cards that just they're flashing in my head as we're talking. But one of them was about wisdom. And I'm not sure, I just met Lady Wisdom. She came in
Mm-hmm.
a couple weeks ago as a spiritual being and part of creation that I had not met her before. And I think one of your cards either represented her or a form of her.
Hmm. I'll
You're
make a
not sure
look.
which one.
See if I can.
You were talking about wisdom, but then while you're doing that, the other one that really showed up was the clearing the cords.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And it was interesting because I didn't know I had them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's again one of my favorite cards in the deck in terms of just practical use.
Mm.
Um, and I'm going through the cards trying to find the one that you were talking about. There's none that have the name wisdom. There are some that are about spiritual awakening. Um, do you have an idea of what the image was? Because I would really love to bring that card
I
back
would
up.
have thought it would have been in the angel cards,
Hmm.
or maybe even Kuan Yin.
Well, Kuan Yin, yeah, we do have the Kuan Yin card right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember him saying wisdom, but having my own process going on, be funny if maybe you didn't say it and it's just what's coming through for you, Colleen, so you
Yeah,
heard it.
I heard it. Yeah, yeah.
It,
Well,
it
it is a whole new awareness. Speaking of spiritual awakening, it showed up of all things on TikTok, and it was that same thing. Like she came in, Lady Wisdom, also known as Sophia and some other names, but she came in just boom, like I'm here, guy. The lengths I've had to go to reach you. It's
yeah.
on TikTok.
I know too, and I don't know if this was the card, but there's also
Oh,
the
Mary.
Mother Mary card,
Yeah,
and I wanted to talk about this one briefly, just because,
please.
um, first of all, Mother Mary is one of the guides that has shown me along my path in terms of sometimes when I'm writing my books, she will come through very strongly. And I just think it's interesting too, just to talk about the creative process. The When this card was created, Ben, again, who's the artist, he originally wrote to me and he said, "Can I have a picture of you and your son and your wife? Because I want to use that, for the Mary card." And for whatever reason, I kept talking to my wife, and she was being very picky about what we would send, and so we never sent him one, right? And so I think he finally was like, "Well, okay, then I'm just going to move on, and I'm going to have the image of my own wife and our two kids." And then when I thought about it too, well, Jesus did have a brother James, so this all kind of makes sense in a way, right? And it's a beautiful card.
Isn't
But yeah, I just wanted to share that bit about the whole artistic, process of it too. So, and again, Mother Mary has been one of my powerful Reiki guides over the years. So,
Me too. Well, and the children on it, back to the childlike wonder
yeah,
and
yeah,
your creative process of playing with the divine.
Yeah, it's funny because we talk about that, in these modalities, we talk about those kinds of aspects, our intuition and how we're channeling things into, and even guides and stuff. And I don't know if I've ever heard that answer, Brett. So it really made me smile because it's so simple too, and yet and it's not, I know in the process it's infinite, right? But
yeah,
it was just such a beautiful perspective of how that comes through to you.
yeah. Oh, thank you.
Well, let's talk about some of your history with Omega, because with all of what you were sharing in your own spiritual awakening, when did you land with Omega?
Yeah. So
Omega Institute, I should say
yeah,
it. We all abbreviate it, but Omega
yeah.
Institute.
So my first time at Omega Institute was in 1995. I was there as seasonal staff for one season, and then was gone for 5 years. I was actually banned for 5 years. I'm not going to go into that story. Pretty crazy story though. But then I came back in 2000, and I've been at Omega ever since. And Omega Institute, for those who are not familiar with it, it's a holistic retreat center located in Rhinebeck, New York, on 200 acres of really beautiful sacred land. It was founded by Elizabeth Lesser and Stefan Rechtschaffen, who received the inspiration to found it from the Sufi master Pir Vilayat Anayat Khan. They were members of his community called Abode of the Message, and the Abode of the Message used to have different kind of spiritual businesses. And at one point, Pir Vilayat Anayat Khan called Elizabeth and Stefan in his, I don't know if you want to say office or temple or whatever. I wasn't there at the time, but he said, uh, the two of you are supposed to start this place. That is, in his mind, he kept referring to it being like almost like an energetic uh, replica of the Library of Alexandria, where like kind of all this ancient wisdom could be brought together, but in present day time and in through workshops. And so Omega has evolved over the years. For a number of years, Ram Dass was on the board of Omega for a number of years, and so it's a really beautiful, spiritually oriented retreat center in Rhinebeck, New York. And I have, for a number of years, I lived on campus as seasonal staff, and then in 2013, I became core staff, which means I work there year round. And also, that was time for my wife and I to buy a house and start thinking about having a child. So I became core staff and moved off campus, but I still work there, still love it. It's just an amazing place to work at, and also to facilitate workshops and to experience workshops, and just a beautiful, amazing retreat center. And so excited that you're going to be bringing your animal Reiki work to Omega later this year.
Yes, and thank you. So for all of you listening, and I've been talking about that I will be in person teaching Animal Reiki 1 and 2 in May, and then Animal Reiki Master in September at Omega, and they are 4 and 5 day classes. So really excited. And Brett invited me last year when I was there, Brett, for your Wisdom of Reiki conference.
Mhm.
So, and you're having that again this year, right?
Yeah, it's going to be the weekend of June 27th through 29th. That weekend is going to be myself, William Rand, Nicholas Pearson, Tina Zion, and a couple others. So yeah, it's always a fun, fabulous weekend at Omega.
Such a great weekend. And so that's where I met Brett there a couple years ago and then last year too. And so you also were telling me a story about what inspired you with Animal Reiki at Omega. So do you want to share that?
Yeah, I would love to share that. So again, for most of the years at Omega, my supervisor was a woman named Laura Scorino. She was an amazing soul. She also was the person who was the supervisor for Amina Eagle, who I showed that image earlier. Uh, Lois was an amazing, just very generous soul. And she had actually been hired. The person who hired her in her role was Ram Dass. He's the person who gave her final interview when she was hired, back I think in the mid 1990s. And I always had a very special relationship and connection to Lois. And one thing that she often had as an aspiration was for Omega, because Omega has certain initiatives that we have. We're certainly a retreat center, but we have certain initiatives, like there's the Omega Center for Sustainable Living, which is much about, like, preserving the environment and healing the earth. There's also the Omega Women's Leadership Center, which is about really empowering women and kind of, shifting the power dynamic in organizations and in the world. And she always had this dream that another one of our initiatives should really be about bringing healing in, so that it's not just human centric, but really also includes other sentient forms of life, especially the animal kingdom. And that was something that was very dear to her heart. And a couple of years ago, while I was taking a training with William Rand in Holy Fire Reiki, during, I think it was on a Thursday morning, the CEO of Omega, Carla Goldstein, was walking through the dining hall, and she came up to me and she pulled me aside and whispered into my ear. She goes, "I want you to let you know that Lois passed away this morning." And we had all known that Lois was ill, so it wasn't surprising news, but it definitely, kind of hit home. And um, then I went to class, right? Because we were in a training with William, and I remember uh, approaching Pam Allen LeBlanc, who was one of the assistants with William for that training. And I said, I keep getting the sense that I should send one of the Holy Fire experiences to Lois. I said, I just keep getting this sense that she wants to feel this energy. And I said, can you send it to somebody who's passed? And she goes, yes, you can. And so during our break, our lunch break, I, pulled the manual open, and I don't remember if it was a Holy Fire Reiki healing experience or the Holy Love experience. I don't remember which one it was, but I remember sending this experience to Lois's spirit. And I tuned in and asked her if it was okay. And, I definitely got a yes. And I could feel just this enormous sense of joy overcoming her spirit as she was receiving this holy fire healing. And so in that, I felt this really strong connection with her energy, her vision of wanting to do more for the animal world through Omega. And also in that 5 day, not that William wasn't teaching, animal Reiki, but I remember hearing about it, like, oh, animal Reiki. and so that it just kind of spawned this inspiration to look more towards starting to bringing that kind of programming to Omega. And then last summer, when I heard you spoke, Colleen, at the Reiki conference about animal Reiki and all the wisdom that is embodied through those teachings, it just felt very clear to me that this is something that was meant to be. So I just wanted to share that, and again, just honor Lois's spirit in terms of kind of being a guiding force behind this.
Well, in the last podcast, you and I had talked also about your connection and attunement with the trees. And
Mhm.
of course, we have the title of Animal Reiki, but it really is Earth Reiki and for all nature. Well, and for people too, it's everything on the planet. So go ahead and share your story about your connection with the trees.
Yeah, so again, my connection with the trees at Omega is very strong. It kind of started with my teacher Caroline, who I'm going to sidetrack for just a moment because I feel like
Yeah.
Caroline's present, I think, is was also part of you me bringing your work to Omega, because for a number of years we used to have something for the seasonal staff, which we called the Peace Guild, which was a 6-month training that would include training in Reiki up through the master level, and also include some shamanic training and other energy healing forms. And that vision was really founded by Caroline. And again, she's no longer on this plane, and that program unfortunately no longer exists just because of logistical reasons at Omega. But for many years, she would often say, the wars on the planet, the wars that humanity is part of, will never really come to an end until humanity ends its war against the earth and other forms of life. And that always really deeply resonated with me. So the fact that seems also part of the energy of animal Reiki is that we, again, I think we were talking earlier about that sense that, that it really teaches us that we are not in dominion over the earth, but that we are kind of co-creators with it. And so, again, this all just feels so much in alignment. So I felt like I needed to mention that. And now I'll jump part to the
Okay.
trees. So Caroline's the one that really turned me on to really speaking to trees. I mean, and talking to trees, and she was an important mentor of mine. And so in the trees at Omega, there's some very powerful, ancient, wise beings there. And so over the years, I have worked with attuning some of those, at first a few of those trees, and then eventually all of those trees to Reiki. And first starting with the idea of traditional Reiki attunements, and then when I learned the Reiki crystal, then using that process to attune them. And then when I became empowered to holy fire, also doing the holy fire ignitions. So literally all the trees in Omega, through me kind of working with the devic wisdom of that entire grove of trees, all the trees at Omega have Reiki. And I think some people in the main office don't always understand, but sometimes when I'm feeling stressed at work or whatever, there's a particular tree that I go sit out near in the garden at Omega. And that's because I'm sitting there and asking the tree, hey, can you please send me some healing? I could use it right now. And I will also give back to the tree and send some healing to the tree. But um, they are true teachers for me. And I think they also really contribute to that sense of kind of divine magic that happens at Omega, that just kind of these amazing synchronicities that happen at Omega, and just the kind of group energy field that is held there. A lot of teachers that come to Omega often remark, regardless of what they're teaching, whether it's an art workshop or a writing workshop or, meditation or shamanism, we hear a lot of teachers say that they feel that their students simply go to a deeper place in their teaching when they're teaching at Omega. And I think a large part of it is that group field that is created there. And a large part of that group field, I think, is coming from the trees and from the land, you know.
From the land. Well, and of course, all of the just the energy that has been practiced there and taught there. And I do want to talk a little bit again about what you were talking about with Caroline. Is it Caroline or Carolyn?
Carol Lion. She was also really into
Lion.
the goddess Sekhmet, so she liked that lion energy. So it was Carol Lion.
Are you, okay, I have to digress.
Okay.
So when, so her connection was with Sekhmet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you were holding up the dreams card and I was listening to the card and I was like, okay, what are my dreams? Because I was going to, what are my dreams? It's like I say, we're really focused on it right now. And I got finally, as I kind of went through, scanned through what they were, and I landed on show me the questions that I don't know to ask. And when I went to Egypt last year and I was standing in front of Sekhmet, like literally right
Mm-hmm.
here, and I was kind of like, I don't know, even know what to say or do or be. And I hear the same thing. Ask the questions you don't know to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I didn't, we got off on another subject, but I was going to share that when you held up that dream card.
Mm. Wow.
And so talking about that with Carolyn and Sekhmet. uh,
Well,
Anyway,
and it's funny too because Caroline was the inspiration for me for doing that card. So it's kind of like there's a lot of layers of connection here.
seriously,
Yeah,
I missed that piece of it. So she
yeah,
was, oh,
yeah. Because
well,
it was
she
my
spoke to
attempt to
me.
try to replicate her class, you know? Yeah.
She definitely is in the mix. So anyway, back to I'm going to be all into that okay? Because we have been really working with that, and Robin had some really powerful channeling about asking questions last week too, and so it's been a big focus of ours. But back to the animal Reiki at Omega, I'm so excited to be there with it because of the land and the expansion of the class itself and the course itself, that we will actually be able to engage with the land itself
Hmm.
as part of the class and the trees, and really help people, probably a lot that are already interested in that kind of a class would have the interest in connecting with trees or are already doing that. Your pond, by the way, keeps speaking up and
Mm,
saying,
yeah,
oh, and me.
yeah, yeah. That's a very magical pond, and it also needs some healing. I mean, there's some energetics there that are needing some attention. So yeah,
Oh, well, we'll have to talk more about that because as
yeah,
I'm talking, it's
yeah,
so loud in my ears saying, and by the way, the pond.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Well,
Yeah.
but, oh, go
the
ahead.
energy is called the tree of life, animal Reiki energy. And I'm sure you and Colleen have had those conversations, but to just bring that as a part of this conversation too, is that the tree is such a huge piece of the tree
Mm,
of life is such a huge piece of the course of the energy, the roots, the branches of the tree, and how we are receiving from the divine
mm,
imagination
mm,
from the earth, and how it is unified within us as well. And so that will be a really interesting part of it, Colleen, with the trees there, and how you can do Reiki with there, because it's such a big part of the energy in the course as well.
mm,
Well, and that concept of healing and that forgiveness card that you also talked about, healing within us, because that is a big piece of the actual course that we do during the work, is some forgiveness energy that can be within us, whether it's something that is from us or generated by the world or ancestral history of the results of the belief that we have dominion over the earth
mhm,
and the misconception that that means domination
mhm,
over the earth.
Mhm.
And what the animals say is for us to take our place in the circle of life with them, to love ourselves the way they love us. And then we create from that love, and we create from communion with the animals, communion with the earth. And so the course is not only, really beneficial for how to work with animals with Reiki, but it also is so powerfully healing for us as people. And that tree of life energy is also, it's an actual attunement to
Mhm.
that energy that also then is usable with people, with everything really,
Mhm.
because the
Mhm.
animals are saying, well, you're part of the animal kingdom and you
Yeah.
belong in the circle of life with us.
Hello, your primates.
It's interesting too, just because as you were speaking, I'm just, kind of tuning into the land at Omega and thinking about, just my experience again, not just working there, but having lived at Omega on site for, when I did for like 12 years. Um, there's and not that I can promise that this is going to happen, but there's so many times when you're at Omega and like there's just a deer walking across the the road or even on campus, or there's a snake that you notice on the path, or there's a hummingbird that's just hovering outside the classroom. So when I think about what you're bringing energetically and to match that in this environment where there's such an abundance of potential for wild animals to maybe want to show up if they're wanting some healing. And again, I can't predict that or say, oh, on Thursday at 2 o'clock, a deer is going to come
Oh,
by.
right.
But I'm just saying that potential exists there and is certainly ripe. And so I think that too just lends itself to the beauty of this work happening at Omega.
Well, I also, the garden area with the benches kind of
Mm-hmm.
right next to the office,
Mm-hmm.
that whole area, there there are butterflies right now
Yeah.
showing, and us. And I mean, I know it's probably cold and they're hibernating right now, but in May they'll be out in full force.
Yeah.
The flowers and the
Yeah.
the
And
land.
even the fish, you mentioned the pond. I mean, we don't swim in the pond anymore. But if you stand near it, usually you can often see, because the water's relatively clear, you can often see, fish in that shallow edge of the pond too.
Oh, the water dwellers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the birds, they've been talking too. Been hearing a lot of them, and at that time, the birds will probably be at the place of their babies getting ready to leave the nest.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of sound too that
Yeah.
we'll be receiving. And just in case anybody else wants to know about it, we also learn distance Reiki with animals and how to practice with animals, all the priorities. And we have three priorities that we really teach. One is safety, of course, is pretty top. Consent with the animals, because the animals have the right to consent or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then also observation, because with animal communication in this style, it's most of the time you're going to have your eyes open. And so the communication actually comes through observation, and how the Reiki energy amplifies that kind of 360 perspective of, activating your instincts, activating your intuition, imagination that we talked about, that allows you to observe and perceive and listen from an entirely different perspective.
Yeah. Can I share something on that?
Please.
Kind of an important lesson on that idea of consent with animals. So shortly after I got my level two, and this is way back in the early '90s, and again, this is a lesson. I'm not, sharing this with pride, but I was like, oh, because I used to work at a Raptor Center in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and I got my level 2 in Dayton, Ohio, and I'm like, I'm gonna go send some Reiki to these birds in the Raptor Center. I didn't tune in. I didn't ask for consent. I was just standing outside and just kind of blasting away. And I noticed they were like kind of jittery and looking around like, what's going on? And for me, again, I'm not happy I did that, but it was a very important lesson like, oh, just because I have an energetic gift doesn't mean that they want it. Or if they do want it, I should ask and find out if they want it rather than just throwing energy at them. And so for me in my own Reiki journey, that incident was just a very powerful lesson for me that it's very important. Yes, we want to bring, healing to all sentient beings, but that idea of asking for consent, of tuning in, and whether you're using muscle testing or just tuning in and asking and waiting for that intuitive answer, but having some way of consent. And I know you build that into your program, but I just wanted to share my own little lesson from stepping in the wrong direction on my own path.
We use examples of our lessons in the class quite a bit. All of us have a story like that too, of how, because they teach us, the animals teach us. And then,
Yeah.
especially during the writing of the manual, there were countless things that the animals taught us, and not all lessons like that, those are the ones that we have also, but the other ones are kind of even on a like you said, how you were like, well, I'm sharing this because it was a lesson that I learned. But other ones are also like their wisdom that they shared with us. But
Mhm.
they teach us so much. And yeah, we definitely all have lessons that
We've been the object of the lesson.
the object of the lesson. Colleen has had some safety lessons of, making sure you're safe with alpacas. Sue has a story almost exactly like yours. Like,
Yeah.
so we definitely all have those lessons as well, which I think is always good to hear, because you think like, oh, okay, it's not just me that's had those things that have happened, we all learn
Mm.
from them.
Robin, share the part about the blessing because I think that and how the actual, the exchange of blessing, because that came through you in the journey when we were working on that part of the manual.
Yeah, so when you're in the attunement and really with the energy in general, one of the big pieces of the energy is that it is this blessing exchange. So with the animals, it is, the divine in me sees the divine in you. And so we exchange blessings heart to heart. And one of the big healings that I think happened for all of us, but that was brought through when we were doing this journeying on the information that was to be in the manual, was another aspect of that dominion that was really unexpected, because all of us very much are animal people. We This process was because we want to help the animal world and the animals, and love the animals, of course, and nature as well. It extends out from there too. And so when we first started, we were like telling, here's, this is a gift to save the animals. This is a gift to save the animals. That's where it started, from our heart intention of it. And first day, first journey of this kind of 4-day intensive that we as the authors took, the journeyers, like, they were like, well, excuse me, actually, we are here saving you. And and it showed not just in the energetic aspects, these divine spirits, the divine animal kingdom, not just in the energetic aspects of these divine beings that do save us, they do heal us, it's also in the physical world, right? With animals, so many of us have stories of animals that saved us, maybe actually saved our lives from a situation, but our emotional selves. We have emotional support animals. We have these connections that they save us from those
Mm.
experiences too. And so what they showed in that, it was a gift that they were giving to us as well,
Mm.
humanity as well, And so it really showed that it was this blessing exchange with it, and it was a healing that had to happen as well, of that, oh wait, we are here in communion, we're companions, we are in this namaste with them, as we are in that, you know, seeing each other heart to heart.
It's beautiful.
I was in one of the first journeys, and again, it was such a huge shift in like, oh, it's almost the same thing, Brett, where it was, because it took us 5 years to complete from when William asked us to write it and to completion was 5 years. So it almost feels that same idea of it already existed and then found us to bring it through and manifest it. And so we had to learn along the way with it, and it had to teach us as we went. And it kept saying, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. And in that blessing exchange, initially, I thought I was placing a blessing upon them. And that was the other thing. They came back and said, well, actually, we are sharing a blessing with you, and you're sharing your blessing with us. And so it's an exchange. And so it was such a huge shift in awareness. And then, one of the reasons that they said it was taking so long, which we didn't know at the time, we just knew it kept saying it's not ready yet. Although we worked on it diligently the whole time. But it was in 2018 when the Holy Fire upgrade, Holy Fire 3 upgrade came in with unification consciousness to help us be aware that we are not separate from them. We are not separate from the earth. We're not separate inside ourselves from each other, and that it's healing that significant piece within us and giving us a new sense of belonging on the planet.
Wow.
Loving that self-love card that you have, the self-love. Yeah.
Wow. Just hearing you both speak, I'm just so excited about, this work coming to Omega. And I know you and I have spoken about, whether I will be in the class, and I'm leaning towards it. I haven't gotten to 100% yet, but hearing you speak, I'm just like, I really want to taste this work and to just see it thrive, not just at Omega, but beyond. It sounds like very essential and important work to the next stage of human evolution, I really think.
Yeah, I believe that's true. In the work with the descendants that we do, we work with the ancestors, we also work with the descendants. And they do talk about, from the work I've done with them, they say we do evolve. We make it, we evolve past these hard times, and some of those areas of inner awareness that many of us are kind of learning how to grow and heal from, and then empower ourselves. And particularly right now, as you talked about things being so polarized, the human shaming is just at an all-time high. Volume and the sheer noise of it is, like you almost have to just protect yourself from it because it's so loud. And that is one of the things the animals really teach us, is that in truth, human beings' number one quality is how greatly we love. And, I know you've traveled, I've traveled, Robin's traveled, and all around the world, everywhere I've been, in every condition I've been in, humans love. They're kind, human beings love. And so the noise has one volume, one messaging, but then when you actually meet people heart to heart, and that's what the animals say, if we could learn to love ourselves as much as they love us and the earth loves us, that's how we create we create then from that belief.
Hmm.
So good.
Hmm.
Well, Brett, why don't you just say one more time where people can find you and your cards? And I mean, you have a lot of other books and everything. And as I said earlier, definitely go back and listen to his other episodes as well.
Yeah, so the cards can be found on most bookstores, so if you want to support your local bookstore, you can, if they don't have it available, they can easily order it through their distributor. But also if you want to get it like right away, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, also the US Games website carry it. So those are also online options to pursue getting it. But again, I'm always a fan of trying to support your local bookstore. So if you can, again, if they don't carry it, they should be able to order it for you. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then what
And
about your website and social and stuff like that?
sure, yeah. So I'm active on Facebook. So you can, just type my name in, Brett Bevell. I have both an author's page and also a personal page. Ironically, I seem to have more followers on my personal page than as an author, but at a certain point I just resigned to that. Like, okay, people like the videos of my kid or something. I don't know. But also my website is I have two websites. One is brettbevel.com, and that focuses mainly on my in-person appearances. So like my workshops at Omega, the Wisdom of Reiki conference. I'm also teaching a level 1 and 2 weekend at Omega in July, and then a master level later in the fall. So information for that is all on brettbevel.com. But then I also offer regular like online healings and some things online that are through a different website, which is academyofloveandlight.us.
I love that. Well, and before we completely finish up, can you randomly pick either 1 or 3 cards and share it with us?
Sure. So you may even hear some sound of shuffling in the background here because
Okay.
it's here. Oh, wow. So I shuffled it once, cut it, and who popped up? Amina.
Oh,
So let's just ask this card again. It's the meditation on the precept for kindness. So let's just ask this card to bring us all into a Reiki meditation. Just for today, I will be kind to every living thing. And then I'm going to pick one more card. Huh. Neem Karoli Baba. And again, there's a lot of Neem Karoli Baba energy at Omega Institute. Neem Karoli Baba was the guru of the board at Omega. Neem Karoli Baba, passed away before Omega ever existed. But that energy of spiritual service, being in service to the divine, is a big part of Omega. And so just inviting that energy to come through the card.
love it. Because I do feel like spiritual service is what I can do right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's-
There's some people who were his strongest devotees that believed he was actually an incarnation of the Hindu god Hanuman, the monkey god. And again, Hanuman is all about service to the divine. That's really sort of the message behind Hanuman's energy.
I love that. I love that just phrasing even because I've been trying to, get concisely say what I think we can do right now energetically to
Mm-hmm.
contribute to the betterment of the world. And that is through that activation of spiritual service,
Mm-hmm.
divine service, and
Yeah.
then allowing it to do what it does. But, we are placing our intention into that spiritual connection and divine intention.
Yeah. And if I have time to share, this
Yeah.
just popped in my head as you were talking about it, thinking, okay, Neem Karoli Baba, and at the Ram Dass Library, there's a statue of Neem Karoli Baba, but then there's also on the upper level of the Ram Dass Library, there's these photographs, and I didn't put it together until right now in this moment. There's these photographs of different spiritual masters through since the time that the camera has been invented. And through the photographs, their amazing energy kind of fills that wing or that part of the Ram Dass library. Like some people come and just sit in a chair just to be in the presence of those photographs. And I didn't put that together until right now. I realized that the Reiki portals that are in kind of like the divine saints, avatars, angels cards in the deck, they're kind of serving the same purpose as those photographs do, where you can just kind of come and sit in the energy of these sacred beings. So I don't know, I just felt drawn to share that, not just about the deck, but also that amazing energetic that is literally at the heart of the Omega campus on the second floor of the Ram Dass Library. So
Well, I'm excited for both. I definitely am going to be getting the deck right away. And also, I think before teaching this time at Omega, I'm going to get there a little bit early and, you know, have a chance to wander the campus a little
that would
bit.
be beautiful. That would be
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Brett, thanks again. And thank you, of course, to all of our listeners. We sure appreciate it. Also, if you could always remember to like and subscribe and review us, we would sure appreciate it. As always, Colleen and I are ReikiLifestyle.com. All right. Much love, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you,
Thank you both
Brett.
for having me. Thank you so much.